Getting thumbs up. Well, we're vibing today. Let's go. I got my mustache specifically to give this presentation. I'm bringing the goal here is to bring a Ron Burgundy-esque vibe. So we'll see how that goes. But let's hop into it. I'm gonna try and share my screen. That works. All right. Roger that. Let's get into it. So today I am giving the presentation on PR for Bitcoin startups. So the goal here is to give you guys the direction that you need to get the media attention you deserve. Basically, I think it's going to be a combination of like a 30,000 foot view and kind of like how this works and how you can structure bringing this approach in house. And then we'll get granular on certain things as well. Um, I'll say that I'm sure there's going to be questions, so just feel free to chime in with any questions you have throughout the presentation or after. If I somehow miss it, we can make sure to go through that in the Q&A. But in general, why is PR important? Well, because it builds reputation, it establishes credibility, and enhances visibility. So PR over a long time horizon is vital for attracting customers, investors, and talent. I always get a question like, how is PR, different than marketing? I'd say they're very compatible together. Public relations is really how you're representing yourself to the public. I know that sounds pretty obvious, but it really complements that kind of conversion marketing in terms of like bringing in revenue and I would say almost being top of the funnel, right? So the sentiment that people get about your brand, how they perceive the founder, how their people are discovering you in the media and in what ways, what mediums, and what's the overall takeaway with how your brand and your spokespeople is represented. So very, very complementary together. I like to say that there are three buckets. So you might say four buckets as well, but so the first one, announcements and community updates. Not everything is newsworthy, right? But I'll say that announcements are the most impactful way to get a lot of coverage at once and to really go out there to the public with a unified front in terms of your startup's value proposition. We're going to spend a lot of time. I think probably the majority of this presentation is going to be on the announcement front and what qualifies something as newsworthy. And community updates, we'll talk about that as well. Second bucket's media activity, which would be podcast stuff, getting quotes in the media. Third bucket's content, which specifically we'll talk a little bit about opinion editorials, op-eds. The fourth, I would say, would be events. I don't have it featured here because it's kind of pretty straightforward. It's just, I'll just say events are a great way to get on stage and to build your brand. So it's just a matter of staying on top of that, but I'm not really talking about that in this presentation. So the first thing you're going to do is get a Google Doc and create these different sections, all right? Announcements, media activity, content. Set aside time every week on a Monday or a Tuesday to sort of just revisit these different components and kind of chip away at that over time. So first bucket in terms of announcements, the differentiating factor here between a community update and quote unquote announcement is going to be if something is newsworthy or not. So in general, what makes something newsworthy? Some new novel product be newsworthy, a partnership. So, recognizable name in the industry, something that maybe elevates both brands. Like Anchor Watch, for instance, working with Lloyd's of London, that's a partnership, and that's pretty major, right? Elevates Anchor Watch more than it does Lloyd's, but it gives recognition and credibility to Anchor Watch. Funding is a big one. The spectrum of the newsworthiness for funding is obviously going to vary greatly depending on how big the raise is, what stage of a raise it is, and that is going to maybe dictate whether you can get coverage in, say, like a Bloomberg or Forbes or whatever versus maybe a crypto native. We could talk a bit more about that specifically as well. Last one is going to be any data or milestones. I think data, especially, if you to put this into maybe a more specific example, like if you any like like a state of the Lightning Network report. Lightning Network, for instance, it's a peer-to-peer network. It's not a blockchain, so getting data from Lightning Network is really tough, right? You can't just easily access this data. So there is a big value for that type of report if you have some proprietary, anonymized way of aggregating data, whether firsthand, secondhand, and compiling that into something that you want to go out there and sort of use as a way to be a thought leader in the space. Data is fantastic because you can tell a lot of stories behind the data. So I love that one. And whatever your startup's doing, whether it is firsthand data, there's probably adjacent um, I would say probably verticals that you can think of how can we be creative in terms of doing some type of data report or overall report for the market. Um, Either way, if it's newsworthy or not, you're still going to draft an announcement. We'll get there in a second, but to quickly assess, I don't want you to spend a lot of time like you know uh, at this point to say, oh, this is definitely going to be newsworthy or not. But at this point, to kind of separate them into the two buckets between newsworthy announcements and community updates, just spend like 10 minutes searching on socials or news aggregators. So an easy example, uh, go on, Google News, sorry, news aggregator, and if you have a raise announcement, you can put in, Bitcoin raise, or you can find anyone that that's done a raise, and or identify someone that's done a raise, and just keyword that company with raise and just see what comes up. If you get a few different articles that are coming up, or even one, that tells you that okay, this is probably something that's going to be newsworthy. So again, don't spend too much time on this section. It's just to really kind of give you clarity so you can mark it as potentially newsworthy. And there's a lot of different ways that you can really get specific to see who you want to pitch. So we'll go through that as well. Regardless, you're going to want to draft an announcement. Uh, I like to think of the announcement just as like putting a flag in the ground, right? Like that is a definitive point in time. You're drafting something with language you can control that is advancing the benefits of what your startup is doing and the value proposition. You can control that announcement word for word. So whether it's going to be a newsworthy announcement or community update, this is a process that you're going to want to go through. The only difference is whether you're going to pitch it to the media or if it's going to go out on the socials and live on your website and that type of thing. Yeah, you could do a whole session on drafting the perfect announcement, but in general, make sure you have a strong headline. You want to be able to capture attention quickly. So think about that headline, that header in the announcement being maybe that's going to be something that a reporter might try and pick up and find newsworthy. Uh, Keep it concise. I see that sometimes there is a bit of a tendency to want to overshare. I've seen certain announcements go out that maybe are like 2 pages or longer, and then it gets really into like the specifics of a thing. Best practice is to keep that to about a page or a page and a quarter, page and a half at max. And you can always at the bottom of that announcement you can have links. So if there's documentation that requires a more maybe technical product announcement or something of that nature, you can lead people to that documentation at the bottom. But the main thing here is to be really benefits based with that announcement. Definitely avoid hyperbole. You skip words like revolutionary. I'll say that AI can be a helpful tool in drafting an announcement just to maybe give you some direction. But at the same time, you always know when you look at AI. I mean, I use this presentation is an automated AI presentation, all the visuals and stuff, my original content. But anyway, you can tell that image is AI, right? But you're gonna. I find sometimes AI will give you words like revolutionary or like game changing or whatever it is. Sometimes people want to really lean into being the first. Also, we're the first product to do this, the first of its kind. And in that case, if it is the first, that's fine to mention. You can even lead with that, but you've got to be really certain that that language that you're using is factual. There's a lot of fatigue with reporters and probably just like regular people seeing things that are, game changing, revolutionary, and first of its kind. So just be a bit cautious about that. You're telling a story in the announcement, but you're doing it in a way that's factual and pretty, let's say, dry, to be quite honest, because that's where the quotes come in. Quotes add some credibility and some personality. In terms of credibility, getting a quote from an investor or a partner, that's going to add credibility. But you should always have a quote from your founder or co-founders in the announcement. And in that quote, they can really talk about the significance. They can lean into more of the color within the announcement because it's directly attributed to them, right? So that is a really good process, a good forcing function, even for just really getting down to the nitty gritty of what the main takeaway is of this announcement. So once you've got that announcement drafted, I did a session and I got the question, I think, about some like paid opportunities. So I wanted to touch on this and just disambiguate between the two routes here. So you've got PR wire services and you've got feature coverage. PR wire services are any syndicated, any service that you can put your word for an announcement and you can pay for that announcement to be distributed throughout a network of different websites. And it varies in cost. I mean, anyone can do this. It's good for SEO, and you will get, if you're choosing, good ones, you will get picked up in like the AP Newses of the world or Benzingas or Market Insiders. There's a lot of other ones that are like these little, cryptoxyz.com. That's like, what the fuck is that? It's nothing. It's just, in a way, these websites that have been spun up to be a part of this entire network of syndicated coverage. And it's all essentially backlinking. Depending on what you're paying, I would say, there's a couple that I would recommend that are in the $500 range that are going to get you some good syndicated names, but it can get pretty expensive. I say 500 to 6,500 per announcement here, depending on who you're using, the type of tier they're offering. But there are ones that are actually more expensive than that. I'll say this. If you're going to use one of these services, just reach out to me and I can give you some more direction here. I don't have the services listed, but off the top of my head, I'll tell you that Finance Wire is a good option. Chainwire is good. Chainwire is like more crypto specific, but Chainwire is going to be a lot more expensive. I think the minimum is maybe 2K to get that one announcement out there. And then that would get you on like Cointelegraph maybe, and some certain other ones like that. But I'm connected with the Finance Wire guys and some other founders of different wire services, so that if you wanted to take advantage of this, I could make an intro, and I think they'd get you like 10 or 15% off or something. Every bit counts when you're a startup. So I'm happy to guide you through that and make an introduction if that's something that's interesting to you. Regardless if you're pitching this out to the media or not, getting something on the wire is a good idea. It's a best practice if you can afford it. Okay. If you can't afford it, there's nothing wrong with just keeping that announcement on your website in a blog or a news section. And that's totally fine. The difference between the PR services and the feature coverage, which is really where the value comes in, is that the feature coverage, we're pitching this announcement out to the media. We're finding and identifying the best outlets that we want to be in, the specific reporters that are covering that beat, and we're giving them the opportunity to write a good story about your company and about why this is newsworthy. So the type of coverage you're going to see in feature coverage is going to be an in-depth article. It's not going to be the word-for-word announcement that you drafted. Hopefully, it will include some type of human interest angle about the founder or the company. It'll provide more context, and all that is gathered when you hopefully set up an interview to connect with that reporter, and provide some commentary for them to give them some guidance, because they want to come out and do something that's going to be different, right, in terms of other outlets that are covering it. So always a good idea to hop on calls with them. And I think the long and the short of it, in terms of when you look at how the longevity of how these two things index over time. When you go to search for a company, um, it's always the featured coverage, if they have it, that comes up ahead of the syndicated coverage. So it just indexes better. It's better for SEO, and of course enhances credibility, because essentially, I would say a stamp of approval, but if you get coverage in right, a Bloomberg or a CoinDesk or Bitcoin Magazine, it's a level of credibility that you're not going to get from just doing something on the wire. So now that you've written the announcement, you've got to do the PR wire stuff, and this is something you want to get feature coverage. Is how do we get feature coverage? Well, I told you before, you didn't want to spend like more than 10 minutes to evaluate if something's newsworthy or not, because creating the pitch list is really going to be that forcing function for figuring out how potentially newsworthy something might be. So the first thing you're going to want to do is create a Google Sheet, and do some columns, media outlet, reporter name, headline, link to the article, contact information there if it's in the author page. You're going to want to make sure that you have this created before you start actually doing all of your due diligence here, because it can get pretty in the weeds. You can start by using Google News, casting a wide net at first. And again, an easy way to do that, if it's a raise announcement, you can look for crypto raise, or you can look for Bitcoin raise. Use a combination of different words on Google News to see what kind of pops up. Bring that over into the spreadsheet. As you're doing that research, and you compile those articles. And even if you get multiple hits from the same website and there's different reporters, just get that all out there in the sheet. So again, if it's a raise, you can do raise specific searches. If it's a good, I think, helpful way of thinking about this too is if you have a competitor in the space, a competitor or a company that you're aspirational to within Bitcoin or crypto or outside of it, you can do keyword searches for that company to see where they've popped up, to give you an idea. The thing that you're going to want to do, though, is so, for instance, if you do that keyword search for that competitor or that aspirational company, and you see that they got coverage in Bloomberg, and you go, "Oh, great! Like I can get coverage in Bloomberg because they were covered in Bloomberg, so maybe I've got a good chance I can pitch this same reporter." But then you look at that article, and it's a raise announcement, and it's like a $50 million raise, and what you're pitching is a product, or you're pitching data. It's not going to be a fit. So it's really crucial to find the correct reporter with the correct beat and focus, so that you're pitching them something relevant. Because if you're not, it could actually have, you're not going to hear from them, or it just doesn't look that good, and it's a waste of your time and it's a waste of their time. I find the easiest, well, I'll take that back, not the easiest, but the most thorough way of building a good pitch list is actually creating a master list of all the target media outlets that you want coverage in. So you don't need to be, I mean, for my clients, of course, I'm very thorough. So I'm creating a list of like maybe 20 to 25 outlets that I want them to get coverage in. And then I'm going outlet by outlet and I'm doing those keyword searches directly in that website. And I'm looking through multiple reporters and I'm trying to identify the right fit. And to do that, you got to read or scan a few different articles that they've written, and you have to get the contact information. But that's the most thorough way of doing it. Um, uh, a lot of these things are not going to show up in AI. It's just not there yet to get that. I mean, they can get real time information, but for whatever reason, it just doesn't pick up, what's in the dungeons of all these outlets. Uh, so yeah, it can feel a bit overwhelming. I'm saying like 20 outlets, but if you just said, okay, I've got this product that I'm launching, and I really just I want to get in the Bitcoin press. I want to get in Bitcoin Magazine. I want to get in Bitcoin News. I want no bullshit Bitcoin. I want the Bitcoin Breakdown newsletter. I want whatever. Just maybe select the top 5 that you want. Identify the right people to reach out to there, and build that list that way. What's up, Keith? Would you say PR is more important for B2B or B2C companies? Both, man. everybody needs PR, for sure. And but I think it'll probably be more beneficial at the end here we can face to face it back in the room when I'm not just sharing my screen. But yeah, we can. Great question. Got some hibiscus tea going on today with a little bit of honey. It's good stuff. Uh, once you've got that that pitch list squared away, you're going to need to draft the pitch. Good news here is that announcement that you spent time drafting is already going to kind of inform a lot of that language that you use. And I'm going to show you a specific example of what a good pitch looks like here in a moment. But in general, you want to do that research to see what's trending and how does it relate to Bitcoin right now. So in addition to this news that I'm pitching, is there a hook? Is there like something we could say about nation state adoption, or is there something we can say about Tether going on the Lightning Network, or something happening in politics? Someone said something, and whatever it is, can we kind of like ride this wave of this trend and tie that in to our launch so we can give that reporter something timely in addition to newsworthy that would be of interest for them. And yeah, you're going to do this by actually, just going through building that pitch list. You're going to learn a lot about what these reporters like to cover and the types of headlines that they like to write. And so that's going to inform drafting the pitch. So recurring theme here is be concise, be clear, and be jargon free. Subject line is a really big deal. You've got reporters that are getting, I mean, depending on who you're pitching, like 500 plus emails a day. So there's fatigue there, there's overwhelm there. So I spend a lot of time on the subject line alone, writing. I mean, it's easy to say, oh, I'm just going to like copy the headline from the announcement and get it over there. But I think I'll do like 10 subject lines, and just get feedback on those from other folks in the industry that I'm connected with. And ultimately you want that subject to write like a headline. Your help me help you mentality. You're thinking about the reporter when you're drafting this subject line and trying to give them a newsworthy headline right from the get-go. Essentially trying as much as possible to do the job for them. And you want to keep it short, right? 5 to 7 words is great. You'll notice here that in this subject line, I broke the rule already because it's not 5 to 7 words. But I'll show you how you can cut that down, right? But the subject is, you're going to read, if you're pitching something that's news, which is going to be an announcement or a data report or something like that at a future date, definitive time and date. The subject, you want to start off with putting news there. And this subject, read, data report shows countries' interest in Bitcoin increased 300% since last year. That's a good hook. But where could I have cut down here? Data report, those two words, redundant. Okay. I can eliminate one of those. I can say data shows or report shows countries' interest in Bitcoin increased 300% since last year. Since last year, three words right there. What can I do? I could put year over year instead of since last year. So just in this example alone, you can already cut down 4 words and get it to something that's shorter. And that's kind of the just the exercise of writing these pitches and getting feedback from other folks at the company or you guys you're connected to in the industry. And the first thing here is trying to attach this data report onto some type of timely hook, as I mentioned. So with the recent development that X country is adding Bitcoin to their treasury and looking for ways to integrate it within their economy, it's clear we're on the brink of global adoption. So you're giving them, that's a hook, that's a timely hook. I saw you recently covered X, hyperlink to an article that they've written, which shows that you've done the research and you understand their beat. And I thought you might be interested in the following news. So one, you're demonstrating that here's a hook that can potentially be used. It's even maybe a reason that we drafted this data. One of the reasons, right, because this is what we do. And I understand that you cover this beat. And so then you want to give them the specific date and time that news, that report is going live. So on X month, date, time, X company, with the one-liner after that, the leading Bitcoin treasury solution is releasing the report on the state of Bitcoin global adoption, which among other takeaways finds that data point 1, data point 2, data point 3. And for those data points, keep them about, even if it's not a data point, doesn't need to be a data point. In this example, it is. But in terms of talking about the significance of a news, you could say this news is significant because X, Y, Z. Because why? How is it advancing the industry forward? Is this something novel? Are there any partners that are a part of that announcement? And just trying to find like 3 different bullet points that can really sell why something's newsworthy. And ask them if they're interested in seeing the report under embargo until that date and time, and offer up someone at the suite level, which would probably be yourself in this instance, to break down the key findings, to break down why this is newsworthy. So to give that reporter access, firsthand into the leader of the company. The embargo terminology, just to be straightforward about that, it's essentially a promise. Okay, the reporter is promising to not break the news ahead of time that it's meant to go live. So there's a couple different routes or strategies or tools that you can use in this outreach process, in this pitch. It's an embargo versus exclusive. So the embargo route is you have that big list of reporters across various outlets, and you're pitching them all at once. Obviously, separate emails because you're going to want to tweak the messaging depending on who you're reaching out to and all that. But you're pitching them on the same day, and that's going to probably work for most of the time. One tool that you could use is exclusive pitching. And instead of pitching a bunch of reporters all at once, you could say, well, man, we've got this raise and we really want to see if we can get some coverage in Fortune or Bloomberg or Forbes. Like, well, that's like our goal. We want to make it in there. Uh, what can we do to incentivize uh, that reporter to cover this? So you can, instead of pitching all the reporters at once, you can identify, say, 3 reporters across, like, an aspirational outlet, a mainstream outlet, and you can go reporter by reporter. So that first reporter, uh, you say, instead of saying news in the subject line, exclusive offer with the same subject, and you say, I want to give you the exclusive right to break this news on this date and time. And you think about it, that is something that's coveted from the media. They want to go out and they want to be the ones that are breaking news, and they want to be the only ones to be able to own that. And it provides a certain level of even validation for their outlet, that they can get that type of scoop. Um, the downside is that you're not going to have that big comprehensive list. You have to pitch one at a time, and we're going to get into talking about the time frame in which you want to pitch reporters. But if 8 days, business days of pitching, if you're pitching one reporter at a time, you want to give them at least 2 days to get back to you and tell you if they're going to pass on the exclusive or take the exclusive. And so if you're giving everybody, 2 days, then you can see how that really cuts into the runway. Um, Even if, it's a good idea if you're going to offer exclusive to kind of buffer in more time into that pitching, because if you don't end up getting an exclusive in one of these mainstream outlets, you want to give yourself maybe like 4 more days, 5 more days to be able to pitch another list under embargo, and go about it that way to ensure that you can hopefully have coverage on that day. So yeah, as I said, getting if you have the announcement approved on a Friday, you can begin doing outreach on a Monday. That's your first pitch. Second pitch goes out a couple 2 or 3 days after that, and then your final follow up is going to go out, early on in the next week. You want to kind of target a go live date for an announcement. You want to avoid Mondays and Fridays. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are all good days to set that embargo date and time. And um, yeah, as I mentioned, at minimum, I would say to be successful, 8 business days, because Mondays are tough and Fridays are tough, and so you can see how you run out of time pretty quickly. The whole point here is to give that reporter enough time to hop on a call with you, to do an interview, give them time to write a story. Uh, all reporters are juggling multiple stories at once, right? Unless they're working on something huge, right? And so you want to make it easy for them to say yes. Give them a long enough timeline where they can, get the job done. It's not going to be successful if you're pitching something just a few days in advance. At that point, you're probably better off just letting them know that you've got some news coming up on that date and time, and even avoiding all the, kind of embargo or exclusive formal terminology. Yeah, because again, you need to give them time to evaluate and write that story. Launch day strategy. So ideally, you've heard back from reporters. They have confirmed they're going to cover the news. Maybe even have pre-recorded a podcast with like someone you're well connected to in the space. And you get the thing with podcasts in terms of pitching them when you're doing these like embargo language, is that you just need to make sure that podcaster understands that they cannot leak that news ahead of time or get like a bit too excited and put out a tweet, before the reporters break it. Reporters understand that terminology. Podcasters do not. It's a lot more informal. So just being super clear with them. If you've got that relationship, you can do that. You can line up a pre-recorded podcast to go live the same, day and time that the news goes live. That's great. So you want to monitor for coverage, have a different sheet created where you can track and log all those press hits in the sheet. Um, anytime a piece of feature coverage comes out, make sure that you're posting that on socials, on X, on Noster. Tag that outlet, tag that reporter. You can take a certain section of that article about what they wrote about you, and you can kind of put that in parentheses and tweet that out. Um, thank them for the excellent coverage, and then that increases the chances that that outlet or that reporter is going to retweet the story that you tweeted out. And so you can see, like, that's just that so much more value than just having that story live on the website. There's ways that you can sort of encourage the virality. The same thing with the podcast, right? So if you can ahead of time, if you've got access to that and you can clip 2 minutes of a podcast that really goes into why this is newsworthy and a big deal, you can have that ready to post on your socials. And so that day, you really just want to be like in your control center, making sure you're monitoring, sharing, engaging, responding to people in the comments, tweeting other people, reposting other people that are reposting you. It's just this whole clusterfuck of excitement. And yeah, so like lean into that. But on that day, you're also going to want to reach out to the outlets again that didn't respond initially. That the max times you want to reach out to those reporters in that embargo process is 3 times. You don't want to badger anyone more than 3 times. If they don't get back to you in the third time, then they're overwhelmed or they're just not interested enough to tell you. That's fine. Let it go. There will be future opportunities. No need to linger on that. And now you've gained a data point about who's maybe you can find maybe a different reporter to pitch in the future. But it's okay to follow up with them one final time, one fourth time when the news goes live. So you can just, as a courtesy, say, have that day of outreach pitch ready to go, where anyone that didn't get back to you, you share the syndicated announcement, or you share the announcement that's on your website. Don't share the announcement that's been covered from a competitor outlet. Don't do that. But just let them know, hey, FYI, I know that we didn't get to connect leading into this announcement, but just wanted to let you know that the news went live. Would always welcome hopping on a call in the future. Just a nice courtesy. And yeah, have some podcast outreach ready to go that day as well. So you can maybe have one that's pre-recorded or confirmed and ready to go on that day. But now you've got this moment in time where you really want to own this day. But how can you get more mileage out of this? And so reaching out to podcasts in the space and sharing the feature coverage, the announcement, and saying, hey, this went live today. Would love to come on the podcast and break it down. I think it could be relevant for your audience. So let me know if you're interested. And that's another way of just again, like squeezing as much juice out of that orange as possible. So measuring the success of any given campaign in PR is tough. How do you value a mention in a Wall Street Journal newsletter versus a feature article in CoinDesk? What's the value ascribed to each of those? And so it becomes like, well, like how do we actually measure for this success? Well, but basically whatever you're already doing for your marketing is going to be a good rule of thumb. So tapping into Google Analytics and making sure you have an idea of what things look like before the announcement, coverage, and after. So website traffic, making sure you log your followers in X, or you just being able to look at that to see, are you gaining followers from this? Are you gaining engagement from this? There's services out there that are PR specific, like Meltwater is a media monitoring service, can monitor mentions and sentiment. I think for early stage startups, not necessary. But once you do start to grow, either incorporating that type of tool into your workflow, or if you're working with an agency, they have access to that type of thing that they can help out with. Cision also does comprehensive PR analytics and reporting. These can get pretty expensive, 5 to 10K a year is a range you'd be considering. I think Meltwater actually might be little bit less. But anyway, however, if you're paying for that wire service, they're going to give you some coverage report that is just including the specific articles that that went out on their syndicated network, and will show you overall reach, that type of thing. So that's the announcement section. I want to get into the media activity section. And I don't know, I just kind of wanted to include this Don Draper meme. I think it's pretty hilarious because it's about being creative. It's like, what? How about this? Thinking a little outside the box in terms of how you're going to get attention. There's two ways to do that that fall into the media activity bucket. Well, one, it's about building relationships too. So just identifying the reporters in the space that are covering other probably that you want to build relationships with, that eventually they could cover an announcement, or you could be a good resource for them, and you could identify them and reach out to them, doing proactive outreach and engaging with them. So if you saw that, hey, they just covered this story, or they posted about this thing on Twitter, I want to reach out to them and say, hey, I saw that you posted this on X. I've got an interesting point of view about this. Would be happy to break it down, but here's a few bullet points about my thoughts. Kind of give them some fodder, be a good resource for them, because they're looking for interesting angles, points of views from founders in the space. So doing good relationship management and social listening is going to go a long way there. And then newsjacking. So this is where more of that creativity comes in, where you're like, okay, there's this thing that's trending right now, and how can I, as a founder in this space, latch myself on to this trend and make the most out of this, like, breaking industry news. So two different routes: proactive outreach and newsjacking. Both of these, instead of, I want this to be really easy for you guys. These types of things, I wouldn't put too much pressure on yourself. Sometimes they would require, daily maintenance, but if you can set notifications for identify maybe 3 to 5 reporters in the space that you want to pay attention to and build a relationship with, or a podcast or whatever, set that notification, and you can reply to them in their comments, or it gives you an idea of what you can reach out to them about. I wouldn't overwhelm yourself with anything more than that. There are services that you can use to monitor where, so for instance, there's a service called Quoted, QWOTED. So you go to Quoted, and Quoted is this platform where reporters will put out requests for comment. So you create a profile as a thought leader, and you can set notifications for keywords, whatever it is, Bitcoin or gaming or whatever, crypto, any keyword you can think of. And even if it's adjacent to the business, like programming or whatever. So anytime a reporter is putting out requests for that, you can check it and you can see if they're looking for commentary on a certain thing, and you can actually submit commentary directly through Quoted to that reporter and get quoted in the media. So there's another one called SOS, media outreach, as well. It's not really good with the Bitcoin kind of stuff, but it's pretty good with the tech adjacent things. So yeah, there's ways you could do that. And in terms of giving the perfect quote, again, reoccurring thing: keep it short, memorable, and think fast. You are rewarded for having opinions, right? You're rewarded for saying something a bit spicy. I know we're humble Bitcoiners, and we don't want to, we don't want to do any of the clickbaity stuff. But there's a way to kind of find a middle ground there. And if you want to make it a point to get quote placements, then that's going to help. I put together this. Well, this is actually not. This is a pitch that I've done before that was successful, but I've tweak some things to not show the companies and stuff. So here's some context here. Trump recently bought, and everyone remembers this, Trump recently bought a beer with Bitcoin at PubKey and a burger, and Kamala Harris just announced she's more friendly toward crypto. You remember this time? It's pretty wild. It's a pretty crazy time. Uh, this begs the question, who is the industry supporting, and what will the impact be on innovation markets, both short and long term? This was specifically for a broadcast opportunity I was pitching, but you can just put a different hat on and see how you could tweak this for someone that is, maybe doing a written article or wherever. So the subject being Trump buys beer with Bitcoin and Harris changes her tune. Interview with John Doe, founder at XYZ. Hi, in the last week, Trump bought a beer with Bitcoin and NYC at PubKey, and Harris said she's embracing Bitcoin and crypto at a fundraiser. It's clear this is the first Bitcoin election. So giving them a hook, right? What can you give them that's going to say, oh shit, that's actually a good angle. Like let's talk to this person. And then you're just leveraging yourself as a spokesperson. I've been in the industry for this long. I've got great insights into what the campaign means for the broader industry and markets. What could happen if Trump gets elected versus Harris to the price of Bitcoin. And I can tell you a bit about where my network is leaning as well, who they're going to be voting for, and give you context. And so here's a couple links of me on camera. It could be a podcast, right? Like if you wanted to clip something and link to that in the podcast to show your face, show that you have an opinion on something and that you can articulate yourself in a clear and concise way. Or if you've already got like broadcast clips, you would link that there. In terms of getting those broadcast clips, I mean, this is like way more advanced. I think that comes eventually, right? The broadcast opportunity stuff, and you build up to that. It's kind of a chicken or the egg moment. You've always got to get that first broadcast opportunity, and then once you get that second one, then you've got the credibility. It makes it easier to keep lining up those future interviews. So, just shows you kind of how you can structure a pitch, and you can take this, format it how you want, and you can use it for podcasts, you can use it for broadcasts, you can use it for written commentary opportunities or intro conversations with reporters. Another sub point in the media activity is I mentioned this before, but podcasts. So you know what? People say that there are too many Bitcoin podcasts. Screw that. I think we need more. I think we need more podcasts, more of everything. We are the Bitcoin propaganda department, the Bitcoin marketing department, and I think we need more. Podcasts are a fantastic way of sharing your story. It's a very complimentary and different though, than like a written feature or a piece of content. And there's I think an incredible thing how podcasts like create this sense of eavesdropping, and it has this way of you're just listening into this conversation. And I find like if I listen to like a Rogan podcast and he's talking to an author of this book, I don't know what I mean. Like I just feel like certain things stick when I listen to that podcast versus when I read that book. And it just has something to do with the medium. And Marshall McLuhan, he said the medium is the message. It's kind of a famous communications quote, and I think he's spot on with that. But they're a great way to expand reach too. You don't just need to tap into the Bitcoin podcasts. You should, do all the Bitcoin podcasts, but branch out from that. Identify the podcasts that are crypto related, right? That see if there's been other Bitcoiners that have been on crypto podcasts. I mean, look at Saylor. I mean, shit. Saylor's taken that orange pill approach where it's not just like I'm doing Bitcoin podcasts only. He's going on everything. It doesn't matter, the level of like shitcoinery that's happening in the podcast. There could be an angle there and it might be beneficial. And I'd like to say that it's taking the orange pill approach. If you don't want to do that, I think you can think about what other areas are you passionate about as a founder. So are you libertarian, right? conservative? Are you into health and wellness? Are you in the carnivore stuff? Are you Maha movement? Like what other things really get you going? And finding those podcasts, you're probably already listening to them, and reaching out and offering yourself up to talk about your journey in that specific thing or your viewpoints in that specific thing. In the beginning of the podcast, I mean, they're going to talk about you, and they're going to tell a little bit about your business, and at the end as well. So it's not like, even if the podcast is 80% dedicated to that certain topic, you're building your thought leadership in a really effective way, and you're reaching people that you didn't even think that you could reach. So I mean, I really love just like broadening the horizon in terms of podcasts that are being reached out to. Um, and then outside of just that podcast, don't let it just live there. And that's great. Did the podcast, now it's done. No, I mean, you can take 3 to 4 clips from each podcast you do, and you can clip those down to a minute to 2 minutes or 3 minutes, and and use that for the socials, right? You don't need to do it all in one day. You just kind of schedule that out, so you have a steady flow of you talking about the value proposition of the company or whatever it is. I think that's all I wanted to say about that. That's all I got to say about that. Uh, Op-eds, opinion editorials. Great way to, and this is the last bucket, great way to build thought leadership. Well, an op-ed is going to be about 800 to 1,200 words, depending on the outlet. Different outlets like Bitcoin Magazine has different parameters than Blockworks and the CoinDesk. So I think Blockworks likes to have op-eds, and it has to be 800 words. I think Bitcoin Magazine, it's fine to be 1,000 words plus. But good rule of thumb, something in the 800 to 1,200 word range. And the whole point with this op-ed is that you're going out there with your opinion. I know, straightforward, right? You're making an argument about something and taking a stance. Again, you're going to bring a level of clickbaitiness here, that's okay, right? But the point here is that it can influence public opinion and spark discussions. You want to get people kind of talking about this thing, and this thing is typically a problem. So as a founder, I mean, any of you can attest to the fact that, like, as you're building your product and your service, you're doing that because you're essentially offering a solution to somebody. There's a problem, and then you have this solution, right? There's this gap, and you're filling it. And so we can develop so many opinions from these problems, and there's a lot of threads to pull from each of these problems. And any shit post that you put out there on X, or a spicy opinion that you have, even if it's just a tweet, could probably be turned in to 800 words. And it's an incredible forcing function to really get you thinking even about your business as well, right? The op-ed it's non-promotional, so you're not going to be able to say, at Branta, we're building, this thing, and here's why we're amazing. But you're essentially highlighting all the problems, and then at the end, the solution is, hey, just so kind of happens to be the thing that you're working on, or the service that you offer, without sharing the specifics of that. And it's kind of an artful way of doing it. Yeah, but op-eds are great. And then you can notice that even like these can turn into pitching moments as well. So you can take certain strong opinions from the op-ed, turn those into kind of different quotes, and send that out to the media. You can use it to pitch for podcasts as well. And I think it's okay to be spicy. As a founder, I think it's really it's almost unavoidable that you are an extension of your brand. I know people disagree to a certain extent about this, but it really, people want to get to know the founder, what their belief system is, their code of ethics, and you look at any business, and it's really like unavoidable these days, right? Because we've kind of gone through this paradigm shift. So I think you kind of got to lean into that and be authentic with your opinions. And here's an example of an op-ed that went into CoinDesk from Taras Kulik, who's a founder of Syntech Digital. They're mining hardware providers, and they build out sites and stuff. But he doesn't give a shit. Taras is like, let's be spicy. Biden is going to kill Bitcoin. There was a time when Biden proposed this 30% tax that would kill Bitcoin. And, working with Taras, it's like, you have an appetite? Are you okay with being a bit spicy? Like, let me interview you and get to know your point of view so that I can, develop or work with you to develop this opinion and get it placed in, CoinDesk or wherever. And, it's good to take a stance. Politics can be a bit messy, right? You might want to avoid that, but I think that, again, you can be really artful with it. Okay. Yeah, that is getting to the end here. The key takeaways: consistency is key. PR is a marathon, not a sprint. Yeah, plan for the long haul. Not something that's going to give you an overnight success. But the good news is that if you just chip away at it, week over week in that Google document, and you make sure that you plan for all the announcements and the community updates, and you get a podcast here and a podcast there, a quote here, a quote there, an op-ed, that really does add up over time. And you can think about it this way: if you just did one announcement per quarter, you got one podcast per quarter, you did one quote per quarter that you got placed somewhere, you wrote one op-ed per quarter, all those are very attainable things to do. At the end of a year, you would have 16 different press hits, 16 different touch points for someone to discover your product or service, to learn more about what you're doing. And if you're going about tracking those at the right way and leveraging them in the right way, for instance, creating a section on your website titled "In the News," and you're putting the podcast there and everything that's done, I mean, that's really going to, I think, attract attention and build your brand and the perception of your brand in a really positive way. So just keep trucking, like keep chipping away at things. It is a marathon, not a sprint. But anyway, cold hard sats on X. Give me a follow, and I appreciate everybody. Thanks for joining. Thanks to everyone that asked questions, and Carr, thanks to you so much, man. You're absolutely crushing it, and appreciate you.
No, it's people like you. It's people like the builders and the team that, and everybody behind the scenes that like makes all this happen. I appreciate you guys. And yeah, if you guys need anything from Phil, reach out to him via Slack. Highly recommend working for him, working with him. And then also, if you guys have any questions afterwards, follow him on X, and you can learn new terms like trend jacking and all this kind of stuff, which is cool. Awesome. Thanks, Phil. Have a great day.
Thanks so much. Aloha.